No, wait, you understand.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you've all grabbed a coffee. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this debate on crowdfunding as a driver for the EU's energy transition. Join the discussion live via the hashtag EADebates on Twitter and pose your questions via Slido. That would be the hashtag crowdfunding. More on that later. This continent is in the middle of a rapid and tumultuous green transition. Ensuring buy-in from the broader populace remains crucial in that regard, as NIMBYs loom over every new power line, wind turbine, or solar panel park. Crowdfunding has become a phenomenon in past years, featuring some truly ludicrous or impressive products hitting their funding targets. Could this be applied to a challenge of our time, the green transition? Some public and private projects, when packaged in an engaging and well-known context, can partially finance the green transition through funding support from the general public. Such projects offer a path for both the general public and stakeholders to engage in climate action. This in turn allows for citizens to buy into this generational change we are undergoing. In the case of professional football, our Horizon 2020 funded project Greenfoot, which is also sponsoring this event, develops and implements crowdfunding schemes for renovating stadiums, practice facilities, and related buildings with energy efficiency and renewable energy measures. Think fans coming together to fund a set of solar panels to supply their ever cash-strapped club with cheap and renewable electricity. Is this a winning model? We've gathered a host of experts on community participation to discuss this here today. Normally, we strive for gender balance in our events. Regrettably, on this occasion, we had some difficulties with panelist availability. Nonetheless, I'm excited to introduce, for our discussion today, Michele Sansoni, a project advisor at CINEA, the European Commission's infrastructure agency, who handles the energy transition in cities and financing schemes for sustainable energy on the. They also fund Greenfoot with that in mind. Then it is my pleasure to introduce Dumitru Fonea, a member of the esteemed European Economic and Social Committee, the Group 2 workers in particular, and Adrian Heel, who is the head of campaigns and media at Energy Cities, who work with local communities in tackling the energy transition and climate crisis. And last but not least, glad you could make it, Oliver Gadja, director of the European Crowdfunding Network. And we're going to discuss this today, and we're going to kick it off with some opening statements from the panelists. Michele, if you would be so kind as to start us off.
Good morning. Thanks a lot for this kind presentation. Thanks. Yes, indeed, I'm working for CINEA, which is an executive agency of the European Commission, and was entrusted by the Commission to manage European funding programs in several areas, which will support the delivery of the European Green Deal. I mean, you might know some of those programs, such as Horizon Europe, the Connecting Europe Facility, the Innovation Fund, and also the LIFE program. And I'm today here to represent the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Program, which is, I mean, if you wish, the new kids on the block for the LIFE program. So the program indeed funds projects dealing with different sectors, which can facilitate the energy, the clean energy transition. So buildings, home renovation, products, industry, but also cities and regions, supporting cities and regions in the transition, and also mobilizing investment and finance, which is very close to the debate today. And indeed, crowdfunding is part of what we call innovative financing schemes that we We fund through a call of proposals, and we have a topic open about innovative financing schemes. Actually, it will close next week on the 16th of November. So we hope really to have a new generation of projects studying and researching and developing innovative financing schemes, among them crowdfunding, to really contribute to the clean energy transition at local level.
Thank you, Michele. Dumitru, over to you. How do you feel about crowdfunding to finance the green energy transition?
For us, it's a very interesting and innovative concept. I must say that I am coming from trade union organization from Romania, which has membership in coal mining region areas. And as you know, at the European Union level, we succeeded to establish a just transition platform. And in this concept of just transition, we discussed oftenly about crowdfunding possibilities. Even the European Commission has proposed a contractor was a Bloomberg Philanthropy, which had as a main purpose to identify opportunities to attract funds in the coal mining regions all over Europe. Unfortunately, until now, we didn't succeed to achieve concrete result in this field, attracting money from the international markets. And this is why it's very interesting to know what are the possibilities of this concept of crowdfunding and how we can create a crowdfunding plan and to find out which are the rewards for the potential investors. Our people from the mining regions are very much interested about this concept, and we hope throughout this broadcasting we will be able to understand more what we can do in this regard, and not using only traditional financial investment mechanisms that we know all until now. So that is my my introductions, and I am keen to contribute during the program.
Adrian, I understand that you work a lot with local communities as well. Over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Nicholas. Yeah. My name's Adrian. I'm from Energy City. So we're a network of 1,000 cities in Europe that have been working on the energy transition for 30 years now. And a big part of that energy transition has been community energy, right? Which was cemented in the 2019 Clean Energy for All package, where you had people coming together, forming a legal entity, gathering funds from the community to install renewable energy capacity in their town, right? It's an incredibly powerful thing from a really practical sense because it gives you access to funding that you don't otherwise have, right? The money that's there in your community. And socially, it really brings people together. So that's the community energy part of it. Crowdfunding is a little different, but it's really, really complementary. Because it's less onerous from an administrative point of view, right? It's not about creating a new legal entity. It's not going to have, you're not going to have annual general meetings for the people who are involved in it. You're going to do a virement on your phone, send some cash, and you're going to have some sort of return on that investment over time that's agreed from the forefront. So it's much faster and easier. That speed and ease comes with its own limitations, right? And that's why I say it's complementary. But for something like a football stadium where you've got a real social driver already, I think it can be really, really powerful and help cities build up that renewable capacity within their town borders. So in that sense, it's a fantastic tool that we should be looking at all the more.
Thank you. Oliver, please go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for inviting me as well. So my name is Oliver Geider. I'm representing the European Crowdfunding Network. We are a business network and industry association based in Brussels, actually representing or trying to represent the crowdfunding industry that is growing and shaping as we speak since 10 years. And it's not much I want to add to what already's been said, but if we look at where crowdfunding really came from, the first kind of big events around crowdfunding is 10 years ago. This follows suit the financial crisis of 2008, where financial markets, banks did not perform the way they were expected, and we had a significant lack of capital for, let's say, at least smaller projects. And this is where crowdfunding has, over the last few years, shown that it can work, that it can deliver, that it can involve communities, but also other investors to drive projects that either need complementary finance, so an additional part, a tranche of the financing, or even finance the entirety of a smaller project. And that makes it, I think, really interesting. But realistically, we are probably not there where this market has been entered the, let's say, the general mindset of every citizen, of every project owner. And so we still need to promote the idea and probably also improve the services that this market can offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, a reminder that at the hashtag crowdfunding, you can submit your questions, thoughts, statements via Slido. There's a QR code on your screen right now. And I think that we've already hit onto a really important topic brought up initially by Dumitru on regards small communities' access to financing, because as we all know, the energy transition is particularly capital intensive, right? Meaning that when it comes to financiers' capacity to ready that kind of funding, sometimes there will be a mismatch between demand and supply on the financing side of things. Dumitru, if you could go into a bit more detail on the struggles that your Romanian region is experiencing with access to finance for these capital intensive investments.
Yeah, thank you very much. In reality, are not only Romanian regions, are also Bulgarian, are Spanish, and maybe Czech and Slovakian regions. What is happening? These regions are in industrial transition for a long period of times, and they don't have a very attractive regional profile. So was a lot of efforts from social partners, trade union in particular, but also the governments, to increase the visibility of these regions as regions of opportunities and not regions with problems. So the process was not very easy and was not what we expected to attract the attention of the international markets. Always we see this huge hedge funds which are available all over the world, trillions of dollars are available worldwide, but they are guided in the markets where the money are created and opportunities are done, and everybody is interested to invest in these regions, but not in these particular regions, which are coal mining regions, metallurgical regions, which they are in a strong depression for a long period of time. So the crowdfunding can come with this complementarity, and as is based on empathy, might be an interesting concept. But in Romania, we have some limitation because of lack of trust. Sometimes in these communities and among the people, it's a lack of trust to this instrument. During the time was many frauds which has been created, but we see that for particular purposes, this might work. Now it's a question whether the workers themselves or the members of the community themselves, they contribute to a certain project in order to improve the situation. I give an example for the Jiu Valley in Romania. If we will be able to create 2,000 jobs, actually we will be in the position to have a successful just transition process, because now in the mines which are operating now and which are in transition process until 2032, we will have around 200,000 people working. So creating these jobs in another field might help them to reprofile and to change the regional profile of this area. So it's very interesting to understand from fiscal point of view what can be done, but also we need to educate people in this regard that these possibilities exist. We have an NGO in that area, Planeta Petrila, the planet Petrila, which is a mine in the region, where they try to do this to reshape the regional profile in order to be more attractive. And maybe throughout this kind of operation, the crowdfunding can be a leverage for other activities more intense from financial point of view to attract the attention of London markets, or Toronto, or Vancouver, who knows, New York, so on. So that it's our expectancy from this crowdfunding campaigns.
So there's a certain PR element to it, or rather an element of showing to the business community that this region is very willing to play ball, I would understand. Adrian, I understand that you talk to a lot of regional entities in their energy transition. Could you maybe give us some insight on how these regions are competing for attention from the business community, from financiers?
How are they competing? No. I don't know. I mean, we're talking about, because our focus is community energy, right? Our focus is the crowdfunding. So we're looking at money locally. We're trying to get that money that's available locally into renewable energies. We generally aren't looking for international finance. The whole point of this is it's about building a local resilience, right? And by having that local investment, whether it's through community energy or crowdfunding, I mean, obviously there are difficulties in impoverished regions in Romania or Poland or rural Spain. There's no question. But where there's a little bit of money, you're getting people who are investing their own cash in a local setup, right? That's going to reduce energy costs for someone locally, right? We don't have locational pricing within the Energy Market Directive, unfortunately. But at the very least, whoever's consuming that electricity, if it's going on a football stadium, if it's going on a school roof, it's reducing their costs. So you're making life in that community better. And those people who are making an investment are getting a return on that investment, right? So you've got two different groups that are benefiting locally. And the whole idea is to move away from the international financier market, to build that resilience locally, to build wealth within that energy. And from a city's point of view, it's about building resilience and tackling their own climate goals. So that completely ignored your question about international finance. I'm sorry for that, Nicholas. But it's really, the point for us is about that local city resilience and wealth and just making everyone better off.
You make a very fine point in that I would understand then that the transition is something that for the first time in a long time enables communities to also achieve this degree of independence, right? Because in a conventional centralized energy system, you as a smaller community are almost prohibited from achieving the economies of scale necessary to produce energy for yourself, by yourself, right? I would understand at the very least that the ability to purchase solar panels and install them on your local stadium is something that is for the first time ever now possible. But then, going back to something Dumitru said, which is the lack of trust among some communities and the propensity for fraud, or at least, I mean, given the media coverage of crowdfunding in past years, much of it has been associated with fraud. Now, Oliver, you are probably confronted with these issues on a daily basis, I would assume. Can you tell us a bit about how crowdfunding can be designed to avoid fraudulent behavior? Like, how would this interact?
Yes. Look, you're absolutely right. I mean, crowdfunding has wonderful success stories, and overall, it has worked very well. But it also has really negative stories, so the opposite of success. And of course, there's a lot of mediocrity as well. I think, let me also go back to some of the points you made before to wrap this up shortly. Crowdfunding has been around roughly 10 years, plus minus. Yeah, we can fight on the day, but here in Europe, we've seen activities there. There is different types of crowdfunding. There is the crowdfunding that some of us remember with, big American platforms where people give money and then get something in return, a coffee cup, a T-shirt, and so on. And that's the initial idea we probably have in our mind when somebody says crowdfunding. But early on, we already had crowdfunding platforms with loans. So basically, capital given to businesses, and we had crowdfunding with investment. So participation in the ownership of the company, or bonds, or debt structures. Quite sophisticated in the same way than other financial markets work. What has happened in the last 10 years is that this financial side has actually grown more than the reward side, where you just get a perk, a coffee cup, and has shown some interesting aspects that also convinced policymakers in Brussels to look at this closer. And we are today on the 8th of November, 2 days away from the date where a European law on the crowdfunding market comes into full effect. It is already applicable since 2 years, but the full effect is as of Friday, where we have a fully regulated professional financial services market for crowdfunding. The European law is not frequent, so we have very few laws in the capital markets. This is one of them, and it has been designed by the Commission, by the Parliament, and the Council to reduce the possibilities of fraud, to ensure consumer protection. This needs to play out now, needs to grow a bit, but we can assume that we have competent authorities in every member state that have oversight over platforms that operate in these markets, that we will move away from any type of, or the majority of the fraudulent activities. There's fraud even in regulated markets. So I think that is very positive. And to also go back to the aspect of community, of course, if we have a local energy efficiency measurement, basically on the roof of a sports facility or a school, what we discussed, the majority of the potential investors will be those that have an affinity to this and maybe also can benefit from it. But under crowdfunding in this new law, this is not longer necessary, because crowdfunding is a financial market that now can work across borders. So every European citizen could contribute to it. The motivation may in this case is not always be, I want to support the local community because I may not have an affinity to this, but it could be that I want to diversify my asset allocation, and as small as it might be, it might only be 5,000 euros that I have to invest, but I can do so in many, many projects supporting the energy transition across Europe. Reality is, of course, that we have very few platforms right now that are able to scale, so this needs to take some time, but we have already now platforms that can operate cross-border, that are highly professional, and I would assume that the market develops in this direction. And that, I think, is the answer also for potentially regions we talked about in Romania or maybe in Spain, and rural areas that are removed from access to these types of services. Otherwise, there will be a possibility to access them. There's limits, maximum 5 million euros that you can raise, and then depending on the project, maybe not, the full 5 million can be raised anyway. This is being decided in the discussion with the platform. So I think it's good news. We move away from the potentially frauds that we had to a fully regulated market that is under the oversight of national competent authorities, so the financial services authorities, that is being reviewed by the European security markets authorities and by the Commission, and where there will be adjustments to this law, like there is adjustments to every other law. So we look forward for hopefully a prosperous market that can complement other financial institutions, and maybe also give an impetus to the non-financial crowdfunding market to engage more on the local level. That we need to see, because this market does not fall under the regulation.
So, Oliver, if I understand you correctly, let's say I have a particular affinity to wind power. Will there be like a European crowd fund where I can put, like, let's say 1,000 euros in, and they will use that money to build wind turbines in rural Romania? Is that how it's going to work?
No. So here we need to differentiate between what exists already. So you have, managed funds that you access through your bank, and you say, I would like to invest money. Crowdfunding has been designed to be a direct investment. So you, as an interested investor, somebody who holds a few euros, you have to identify your projects that you want to invest in. So you will have to look for a crowdfunding platform that serves your market. So energy efficiency, there's a number of them out there. There will be more. and you register and you look at the projects that they have and you allocate money to those projects that you want. So you build your own portfolio. There is no fund possibility. You're not just giving money and they do it for you. There is, in the pure loan finance world, there will be something similar, but it's limited. So don't confuse it with a fund. You have to be an active investor. And a project owner has to be active in reaching out to its community to engage in order to promote the project. The platform will bring other investors on top.
Thank you. So, Michele, as the guy that's more on the inside, on the project side of things, is this something that you observe in real life now that the law has sort of come into effect? Are there projects that are already being crowdfunded and the like that are being put into practice as per the new rules, or is this yet to come?
Well, as Oliver said, the regulation will come into force only in 2 days. So, of course, that will be an opportunity for projects working on crowdfunding. If the general environment is safer and is more structured and more regulated. What we observe from the projects we found about crowdfunding is that it's not easy. I mean, the idea per se is very good. Is very attractive if you tell someone what crowdfunding is and what crowdfunding can do. But the reality is that the project that we found are kind of struggling to find interested developers and to run a campaign or run several campaigns which are successful. We have good examples. For example, we have a project which is working with supermarkets. And so also in this case, you have already a crowd, which are a crowd which has an affinity, let's say, because are the customers of the supermarket, and so they through the project, the project developers supported the supermarkets to launch a campaign to put solar panels on the roof, offering the possibility to their customers or everyone else interested to fund through a crowdfunding platforms, and in parallel to let's say work on their loyalty program. So they would give an interest rate which is higher if you own the loyalty card of the supermarket. You will get discounts on the products of the supermarket. You will get free charging for your electric car if you have an electric car, etc. What happens is that we had, for instance, this project working on different countries, and it worked for 2 supermarkets in Italy. It didn't work for 2 supermarkets in Spain because they were resistant to the idea, even if the projects supported them in developing all the process and all the workflow for that to happen. I think the motivations are different. Maybe some companies or some sector are still a bit resistant to use crowdfunding. We don't have to forget that there are, of course, other competing financing sources on the market. And so, yeah, for instance, supermarket might think that it's not a good choice to involve their customers and ask them money to put a solar panel on the roof. I think that could also be the case in the football sector, because we talked about that. In particular, during a period of crisis, maybe someone could say, we don't want to ask our football fans money for renovating our buildings and our stadium, because maybe it's not the right moment, maybe it's not the right time to ask money to them, and they might think, you have money to do that by yourself, why do you ask money to me? So there's a lot of resistance on the ground. The idea in general is very good, is very attractive, but yes, the projects are confronted with this type of challenges.
You said a lot of resistance on the ground. That has me curious. If you have data, what percentage of your efforts or attempts to launch sort of crowdfunding platforms with different partners have succeeded and how many have failed? And could you elaborate a bit more on the resistance? Because as you well said, at the surface, it seems like a rather attractive idea.
Well, in terms of statistics, I mean, I cannot really help. We have a few projects working on that, 4 or 5. So it's a small sample, of course. But yes, we observe that it is not easy to make this idea concrete. There are different challenges. I mean, I made some examples about, for instance, the resistance to ask money to your crowd. Might be football fans, it might be your customers in a supermarket. But I mean, for me, what is say or innovative enough to launch a campaign, then the campaign is successful. Because, for instance, in those 2 supermarkets in Italy, then they managed to raise 100 million, 100,000 euros, and they managed to develop the solar panels on the roof. What I also wanted to say is that I mean, we are talking about now a lot about the end of the pipeline. So the platform, the project on the platform, shiny and attractive, and but there's a lot of work which has to be done. I mean, at the beginning of the pipeline. So what it's very important is to have a project which is solid from the technical point of view, which is viable, which can be financed. You have to have a business plan which is realistic, and then you have to work on surveys. You have to work on identifying your crowd, to understand if your crowd is interested. You have to work on marketing, to launch a campaign, etc., etc. But what is important also, not only for crowdfunding, but for mobilizing, because you mentioned the institutional investors or the international investors, what is important is money is there. So there's a lot of money that is ready to be invested. But what is missing is good and reliable and robust projects to invest money in. So again, also for crowdfunding, apart from the promotion on the platform, in the back, you need to have a very robust project which is safe for investors and citizens to put their money in.
Thank you very much for that explanation. If I may maybe be a bit more pointed then, isn't that a solution to the problem that Dimitri's region seems to face? Isn't it, rather than a lack of the availability of money, not so much a problem, but rather the fact that the projects to transition the region seem to be not sufficiently concrete to attract financing, whether it be crowdfunded or from external investors? Dimitri, could you elaborate? Because obviously we don't know the concrete details, but how concrete are the transition projects in your region?
Yeah, I want to go back a little bit to Adrian's remarks about the meaning of crowdfunding and the relation with international markets. Of course, we understand fully that if we will be able to mobilize a lot of projects in crowdfunding, this can change the situation on the ground. But the intensity of financing, it's quite big in this region, more than 1 billion euro, which are necessary for a particular area. For Romania, this is a big amount, and this is at least 1 billion euro. But if we will, we said that we have a 5 million euro limitation per project. So this means that you need to have a certain level of entropy in the area if you want to have a result, a concrete result in the field. But the potential is there. So if the people will be educated in this regard and they will put these small resources were made available. This can change. We saw in Germany how has evolved the prosumer movement and the Energiewende, which has been in a way planned as a decentralized system of renewable energy. I think it's interesting, to develop cooperatives, to develop these groups of citizens which they want to support each other, and because they share this empathy among themselves and towards the region. So I think this is a very, very interesting concept, but needs to be further investigated. Moreover, we have small producers, the agrotourism sector. It's a very interesting concept for them also, because you need to process the products. So industrial equipment for processing this agriculture products also can be found throughout this small project of crowdfunding. I call it small because now we have also European money availability in Romania, because we are a cohesion country, and we have this money available. So many people are focusing now on attracting or in absorbing the money which are available from the European Commission and so on, all these projects. So the level of interest towards crowdfunding, it's lesser than maybe in other countries. But we have a lot of good examples I saw in United Kingdom, was a lot in France. So this best practices has to be shared, and this pedagogical effort has to be done in order to promote in the future this mode of financing in all over the territory of European Union, including in our countries, which is doing a lot in this regard, but more using social media mechanisms and not necessarily dedicated platforms, which, from my knowledge, are not very known in my country.
Very fair enough. I mean, that sort of goes into the next point with Adrian, because I was curious, I understand that you have by now started and concluded some projects where you built community energy, where you did the groundwork, where you convinced people of what the project entails, what benefits there are. Could you maybe lead us a bit through this process of building up this community energy, community spirit to go into it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's time and it's personal connections, right? And so you need something to focus those personal connections around. And so a lot of the times in the community energy projects that we've seen, it's around a school, right? Where it's the school that's going to benefit. So people are motivated to help the school, and that's why they invest. Or it's the town who's doing the work to coordinate people who in this town is interested in renewable energy and wants to get involved to develop a project. There has to be something to base the project around, something social, whether it's the town hall or an institution like a school or an institution like a football club. And then it's just a matter of time and energy. There's a lot when you think about community energy projects, you think about a kitchen table. Because there's a lot of people who get together at 8 o'clock in the evening after their workday is done around kitchen tables to figure out the nuts and bolts of how many kilowatts can we put on this roof? How much do we need to charge for electricity to make it profitable and give a return for investors? It's slow, hard, slogging work in a lot of ways. But the beauty of it is that it can be replicated millions and millions and millions of times over throughout Europe. And we've seen that through thousands and thousands of energy community projects that bit by bit are generating in the collective massive amounts of energy. But it takes time and energy and dedicated people. That's the answer to it.
So just to clarify, that means that you're borrowing/relying on the shine of an existing institution which has built credibility and community buy-in over years, decades even?
To an extent. That combined with personal connections, right? It's trust. It's my neighbor who's telling me, come and invest in this project. We're going to do it together. We're going to build this together. That's absolutely crucial to it. So, like I'll give you an example. In Krivici, which is a small city in Croatia, right? I was talking to the mayor a couple of weeks ago. He's working with the head of his city department to build a fairly large solar installation that's going to be funded by the community, right? It's a community energy project. His city manager says, "Why don't we just pay for this ourselves? We've got the money, we can just pay for it, right? It would be a lot easier and a lot faster." And the mayor says, "No, because I want the social benefits that go along with bringing these people together and helping to build something. They're investing in their community. The return is financial, ostensibly, but the benefits are very much social cohesiveness within that community. It's really, really important and it's really valuable. And it's hard to quantify, but it's definitely there."
It sounds rather intangible, but as we know, it's often intangibles that make or break projects. But sort of riffing off that point, Michele, you mentioned the story of the two kind of supermarkets, right? Is it because those two supermarket individuals in Spain and in Italy were different levels of like institutionalized entities in their relevant communities? Because that's sort of, it's very fascinating to me that it could work so well in one country and fail so obviously in another. Is it because they weren't enshrined enough, Michele?
Well, in the case of Italy, the two supermarkets were two supermarkets of the same chain, let's say, and it's a chain which is focused on organic products. So I think that played a role because their customers were already, let's say, more interested in this kind of themes, so sustainability in general, because when they promoted the project on the platform, they spoke about sustainability, they spoke about improving our local environment, etc., etc. Technically speaking, it was production of renewable energy. It could be energy efficiency measures to save energy in the buildings, etc., etc. But what is important, and we said, it's the emotional component of the crowdfunding. And in that case, the customers, maybe they were ready, I mean, were more emotionally close to the sustainability issue because they were already clients of a supermarket selling organic products. Maybe in Spain, now I don't remember exactly, but in Spain, maybe they were general supermarkets, and maybe they thought that it couldn't work for their crowd. And so, as in the example Adrian made, probably the chief financial officer said, let's just do our energy efficiency or renewable energy measures and asking for a loan in the bank as we usually do, and don't go through that path. So you need innovators.
Innovators or people who know their crowd well, I would understand, eh? But we have a question on this from Mark Tonkin from the crowd, who's a bit curious about regular commercial entities engaging in crowdfunding. He's asking, and this is going to be ultimately a question for Oliver, I think, who knows the industry best, and he's asking whether crowdfunding isn't normally aimed at those who don't have the financial clout of supermarkets. Supermarkets should be funding these environmental improvements themselves, and sucking crowd money takes it away from projects which can't raise funds elsewhere. Oliver, as an industry insider, how do you view this statement? Do you think he's right on the money, or do you think there's enough crowdfunding money that nobody can suck it away anyways?
That would be nice. So I think we're coming to a point where all these arguments are quite important to look at. Yes, of course, he's right. I mean, there's always, in your own mind, better projects than the other one. That's the one that you would finance. And when Michele says that the supermarkets have this idea that they want to engage socially, then that is also positive. We are looking at a market that is basically having three actors, right? A crowdfunding platform under this regulation is a business that needs to sustain itself, that will make sure that the projects it puts online towards its community of investors and a big platform has 100, 200, 500,000 investors registered that repeatedly may invest, not only the local crowd that comes with the supermarket, but all of those as well. So they will make sure that the projects that they receive are analyzed and fit the profile of the investments that their investors look for. There's no clear statistics, but on average, it's not that much away from what venture capitalists would do. Out of 100 proposals that a crowdfunding platform may receive, they will only finance 5. Why? The other ones made to be too risky. They don't fit exactly their focus, say industry, sector, or regional, and they need to make sure that their investors get the best project that also repays returns and doesn't fail, because their reputation with their investors is good projects, right? And the project owner, and we've seen this in one EU project as well with football clubs, Greenfoot, where you have great opportunities to go crowdfunding, but it's so much easier to get a grant or a bank loan, potentially, if you calculate the cost of running a campaign, cheaper. So if the project owner doesn't have the will to engage in this, it's not going to work. A crowdfunding platform would pick this up. So if a project comes that is not financially feasible, where the owner isn't really behind it, just thinks this is the only way I can get money, is unlikely to get success on a crowdfunding platform. So should a platform refuse one because they can finance it themselves? As a business, they have to go with a project that is the best fit for their investors, because that's where they make their money. But many platforms have an, let's say, social focus. They focus on renewable energy, they focus on whatever activities this is, and there they look that fits, within their framework. So we have impact platforms, we have energy platforms, and we have really boring real estate platforms that just look at the repayment rate and the interest rate, and loan platforms that finance businesses that raise a short-term loan and can repay this. And you, as the investor or the project owner, pick the platform that suits you. Unfortunately, we don't have that many platforms yet that you can just go shopping around. Just a quick fact, we will publish this tomorrow with the Association for Financial Markets, but in the first half of this year, the newly licensed platforms have raised in total around 600 million euros. Not all of this will be linked to the new regulation. There will be other funds flowing into this, but that is a ballpoint figure. So if we can reach, as an industry, in the first year, 1 billion, then hopefully in 5 years, we can reach 10 billion. And then at that point, you have the choice, right? If you have a project that is a bit unstable, there will be a platform that will choose you. And if you are a supermarket that doesn't want to spend the time, you go to the bank or you find the platform that helps you. Today, this is difficult, yeah. And today, the alternatives, be it private finance or bank finance, are still there. And the interest rate scenario that we have right now with rising interest rates does not necessarily help crowdfunding, because it doesn't get cheaper either. Investors also want to return, so the interest rates on crowdfunding platforms rise as well. It's quite interesting to look at this, but understand it as a business, please. Crowdfunding platforms are not social entrepreneurs that do it out of their heart. They need to pay their staff. They need to pay the technology. They need to pay the legal adjustments. They have the lawyers. They have a supervisor authorities that comes and looks at them. So that is incredibly costly to maintain this compliance. And that needs to be earned through crowdfunding campaigns.
Okay, if you say it's so costly, then why don't communities just create a separate legal entity, as Adrian is proposing, and just circumventing your platforms entirely? Could you give us an insight on what it entails to set up your own entity and just create community itself, energy itself? Because if Oliver is saying interest rates are high, our legal costs are rising with all this new EU regulation, what would you tell your members? What should they opt for? Adrian, sorry if I wasn't being clear.
Yeah. There are two different things that can do different things. And they can both use renewable energy and reduce CO2, which is great. But the interest rates rising that affect crowdfunding, that's the same for community energy, right? I mean, it is a social enterprise, but no one's donating, right? They're not doing it primarily for the return, but there has to be some return. So in that sense, they're in the same boat. Yes, there's more admin with community energy for sure, where you've got a legal entity and you're doing annual general meetings, but you're also probably doing more things to tackle energy poverty, and you've got a more social approach to things that you're trying to. You're not just looking at the number of kilowatts you can get onto a roof. You're trying to achieve some sort of social goal at the same time. So crowdfunding, I've no doubt that there are technical things that you have to pay for, and there's compliance and everything else. But it's still that much easier for the people who are investing. And so in that sense, I think they're complementary.
So you're saying there's a trade-off between ease of use at maybe a slightly higher cost relative to process costs that come from setting up all the relevant entities yourself, if I understand you correctly?
I think that's fair. Oliver, do you think that's fair?
Yes, I think you need to. So first, by law, you're not allowed to just go out fundraising. There's a process. If you want to have a public call for money, you want to put it on a poster in your local community, invest here. That only works through regulated platforms. If you want to go privately, it's different. Then you go basically from door to door and talk to the people that you know. That's huge effort as well, right? You still have some cost. You may not have the trust. So this is depending on where you are and how much money there is and how well Adrian is connected or the people in the community. This might be an option, right? If you have a lot of wealthy people there, they say, oh, no, give me, 500,000 euros, and maybe you get 10 people who do this. You don't necessarily need a platform, but you do it privately. You're not achieving the goal of helping everyone locally to participate in the social action. So for that, you would use a platform. To set one up, I think it used to be quite easy. There are technical service providers that will provide you with the software. You just pay a fee. They're not all very good, but they work. But now when we talk about financial services, then it becomes more complicated because you need to have a license. And if you will find a technology provider that also has a license and you can do it on top of their license, there's a risk you will have to pay for it. The reason we do it is because for the individuals, be it in that community, the only way to directly invest in one of these projects is either through a private funding round where you have maybe not enough interest to do this, or through a public call like crowdfunding. And that crowdfunding is the only one there you can do it unless it's a donation. So there is no real alternative, right? If you want to do it public, you need to go this way. If you want a donation, you go a donation. If you want to do a private funding round, then you have a fundraiser, you meet in town hall, you collect checks from people, and then it's that. I believe that would work in small settings, maybe in Romania where the costs are not high. But if the cost is high, if you have a energy efficiency project with a size of 7 million euros, you may raise 3 million from the bank. You may get some big checks from local businessmen, and you may raise 1.5 million from your local citizens and others through crowdfunding. And the mix then, that is what it is doing. And there's also public funds that even could go alongside with this, which makes it very interesting. And that's what we have to look at it. It's not the solution for everything. It becomes part of the mix. And some projects will be fully financed like this, but in many, it just becomes, let's say, the token to interest the community, to help them along. Yeah, we see this in France with big energy projects where developers go to the bank, but then a small part goes through the crowd and the local community has involvement and the local community feels engaged and sees it as their own, even though maybe their investment share is just a minority. They have a different look at this whole development than if they don't participate at all. And that is what I think makes the community part with a supermarket, with a potential football club that would do this, with anyone to say, we want to engage with our community. We want to make them believe and be part of our activities. but we understand they don't finance all of this, and they don't have the money, and they shouldn't take the risk. But we bring them into this whole community. I think for regional development, for community development, this is a fantastic opportunity, but it's a lot of work. And I think Adrian can, if you just think about setting up an energy community, that's already a lot of work. And then if you have to mobilize that to also finance this in a way like this, that means dedication. That needs an entrepreneur. That needs somebody who really wants to do this. But then you have a project, and then you will find a crowdfunding platform.
Okay. Dumitru, Adrian and Oliver have now sort of both made their sides of the pitch. Take us with you to your next conversation with a given mayor who's asking you for advice. You've just come from Brussels. They want to set up some amount of green transition project in their town, and they ask you for advice on how to finance. Going out of this conversation, what would you advise this mayor they should do?
To increase, of course, their relationship with the community. First of all, is trust, because in Romania, we had some pyramidal schemes during the transition period, which ruined the trust among people. So we saw how the state authorities has been involved in this scandalous affair, so which destroyed a little bit, even not more, the trust of people. So this is the main aspect, the trust of the people. The second is the skills. You need to have some skills. What has been said by Adrian and by Oliver are people which they know what they are talking about. I don't know if it's rocket science, but it's something about financial market, financial education. You need to understand how this is working. At least you need to read the legislation in the field and to establish something which is according to the laws and to not be near to the laws. So that it's very important for the community. And afterwards, it's to involve the right people in this campaign. It's was said, we have technological support, but also we have people which are working in this field. So I need the level of expertise which Adrian and Oliver they have. It's very important for this community. But I imagine our people there which are operating. I know we have the Federation for the Development of Civil Society organizations, and which is working with Marshall Fund, with other organizations, Concord, and so on. They are working on these concepts, and they can support the mayors and the authorities to work in this field. A lot of education has to be done. Seems to be like a social engineering. Of course, in the United States, social engineering is in a little bit pejorative, but in Europe, we know that the social engineering, it's the mechanism, and the social technologue might be a crowdfunding manager, because as has been said by Adrian, we are targeting here to strengthen relationships in the community. And I agree that it's a soft power, which it's very important from many points of view, but let's be honest, can be also manipulated by the political factors. Sometimes they give you the impression that they support you, but in reality they might have a political objective, and which is not shared by all the members of the crowdfunding community. So are many lessons to be drawn, but it's important to communicate to the local authorities and to people in the community, trade unions, organized civil societies, to that this instrument, it's available, it's regulated at the European level, and are specialists out there which they can help them in this kind of project. And as many projects of this we will be able to attract to initiate, will be better for our communities. So that is my lesson from this broadcasting.
Very fair. I think that's almost a closing statement. Sadly, or thankfully, actually, we're not even near we're slowly approaching the end, but we're a bit far off. But given what you said, I mean, you very much summed up all the factors that go into it. Michiel, I was wondering, would you say that there's enough support from Brussels, by the EU, by SENIA and similar agencies for would-be communities that want to do these kinds of activities, whether it be crowdfunding or an energy community set up? Like, is there sufficient support?
Hopefully so. I mean, I would say yes, and I hope that people on the ground agree on that. But indeed, I mean, the program that I follow, so the Life energy transition programs gives a lot of support to cities and regions, to homeowners, to facilitate the energy transition. I think I wanted to say that, yeah, the energy transition is really a huge challenge. So there's a lot of different sectors of the economy who need to work together. And what what is important and what I understand is more and more important now at city level, at local level, is that this energy transition needs to go even street by street. So I think crowdfunding, compared to other financing schemes, has this incredible opportunity to engage and involve the people in what the vision of the city is, in what the vision of the region is. So for me, it's very important. But on the other hand, we don't have to think that it's the only way to deliver the energy transition. Of course, it is a complementary instrument. I think we use this word many times, but compared to the other instrument, I think it has this incredible opportunity of mobilizing people, and not only mobilizing finance, private finance, but mobilizing people. And we are offering support through funding programs to project developers who want to try that. And because it has challenges, it has risk, and so I think European funded programs can provide a test bed for project developers to try an approach, to see if it is working, to see if it can be improved and how it has to be improved to work. So yes.
Very fair, but that would lead me to a comparison with existing EU funding, meaning that, for example, I think Next Generation EU has a 1.5% amount of the funds allocated for so-called administrative assistance, where there's consultants brought in to help spend the money, to help administer the money. Is there similar policies in place to ensure that something similar is happening with crowdfunding efforts / energy communities, Michele?
Well, I think what is important to understand, and I think I want to follow up on what Dumitru said, is this challenge of building the capacity and skills of people who need to actually develop projects and deliver the transition at local level. So indeed, there needs to be money, which is for so-called technical assistance. I mean, that's very important, because these kind of instruments need specialized approach, specialized skills. And so we also provide money for technical assistance. It can be in the form of money to, let's say, prepare and develop a project, which is then ready to be financed after the end of the EU fund. This is called project development assistance in our case. There is also an instrument which is called ELENA from the European Investment Bank, which does a similar thing, but then the scale of the investment is a bit different. So ELENA goes for big tickets, a bigger amount of investments. Our project development assistance facility goes for smaller. But when I speak about small and big, it is still bigger than the project that we discussed about for crowdfunding at local level. So it's, for instance, 15 million euros. That's a small project. But we also offer another instrument, which is called European City Facility. So it's open to cities which want to, let's say, make the first step and overcome the barriers in financing their energy transition projects. It is actually, this facility is actually managed by Energy Cities, so Adrian knows it very well. And it gives a small amount of money, so 60,000 euros, which is a small grant. You can say maybe it's too small, but it's not. Actually, I mean, the reality is that it's enough to make a first step to overcome the barriers, to acquire the capacity which is needed to transform your vision, your strategy, your energy plan into concrete projects.
Perfect. I think that means we're headed for the finishing lane. And I think we'd start with concluding statements, leading with Oliver. Just a quick interjection. I got a question from the audience, Besiana, who's asking about the crowdfunding regulation, which will take effect. Could you just maybe tell us the concrete name so they can Google it or something? Thank you. But Oliver, off to you for closing statements.
Yes, of course. So the regulation, if you Google it in English at least, it's the European Crowdfunding Service Provider Regulation. The Commission has the European Union has a website, EU Lex, where you would find the legal texts. There are additional texts that have been published by the European Banking Authority and the European Securities and Markets Authorities that also filter into this. But you can look it up. There's some statements on websites like ours, but I think yes, it's a legal text. It's not easy to comprehend. So I think for that otherwise, maybe get in touch. My closing statement to this would be, for our industry, this regulation is a game changer, or it's supposed to be a game changer. It's supposed to professionalize the industry and, remove the threat of, let's say, illegal activities on the market, remove bad players from the market, and we see the market will shrink. But that's just the beginning. All these aspects that we talk about here, to build a local community, to have projects that are engaged, that understand how it's being done. This still needs a lot of education, and I think the market can only grow as fast in the social area where we have also actors on the social side that want to engage with this. And so that I don't know if we as an industry can solve this alone, but we know that the European Commission has had over the years many activities supporting this. But it cannot be the role of the European Commission to do this. I think that needs to be done also on local level. We know that in some member states there's also support, and there's regional authorities and institutions that really work on this and develop new opportunities to also co-invest from the local government side. But it's not yet, let's say, a broad effort across the European Union. I think that is what we will need. And I would also just add for caution, not everybody wants this, not everybody will support this, and not every renewable energy project wants to go down this lane. So let's see it as what it is. It will be a fantastic opportunity for some that are ready to take the step and then ready to go public and seek small investors and engage with them on a different level. And hopefully that will enable also those that otherwise are cut out of financial market access to at least have this opportunity and engage there. So thank you very much for having us. And we are looking forward for the next 5 years of developing this market. I think that will be very exciting.
Thank you, Oliver. Off to you, Dimitri.
Yeah, thank you. What I can say, we have a wonderful technology in the front of us. The blockchain technology can improve a lot the security of this operation of these activities. We have a raising level of social consciousness in many countries, including in Eastern European countries. We have a huge diaspora. In our case, in Romania, we have 4 million Romanians which are working outside Romania, which can be potential crowdfunder in the futures. So we have a lot of hope regarding this concept. But as has been said, we need to consolidate trust in our communities. We need to know better which kind of regulation are applied, and we need to prepare the people that are able to carry on this kind of crowdfunding projects. Moreover, the government also has to be supportive. The European institutions also, has been said. So let's look very closely to this concept. Let's raise the level of entropy throughout our continent. Europe, it's a particular important area in this sense in over the world. So during the time we will be able to see the results of these new regulations and also of these new attitudes towards crowdfunding.
Thank you very much. Michele? if you would.
Yeah, I mean, fully agree. I think we need to work on that. We need to develop this market. We need to test the approaches that work better. We need to give support to the developers who want to try this on the ground. I think it's a very good instrument. It's an inclusive instrument, and it's, I think, what is very important for me. It's an instrument. It's a financing scheme which can really help to build this trust, which is not only in Romania, sometimes missing between the citizens and the public and private stakeholders, which are which have to contribute with projects to the energy transition.
Thank you. And last but not least, Adrian, the man on the ground, the man who's traveled to 100 municipalities. What have you got for us?
It's kind of you to say. I would say that crowdfunding is in the same place that a lot of the energy transition is. Here in Brussels, we spent the last 4.5 years developing different legal frameworks, developing targets, developing approaches. It's due time. We're approaching due time. We're going to have a new commission. We're going to have a new parliament. There's a lot of national elections. It's time to take all of these tools and to really start using them. And that is going to be the challenge for crowdfunding, for community energy, for the wind sector, and for everyone else. That's going to depend a lot on national governments. There's no getting around it. We've set up, we've got the tools. It's up to us whether we use them or not.
It's due time. I think that is something that we've been telling ourselves for years now, but maybe with every increasing year, it's becoming ever more true. I've learned a lot. Thank you all for participating. I think that we've been able to hammer out some of the fine points, highlight some of the key challenges that are facing crowdfunding, as well as more local green transitions and community buy-in. This has been #EA Debates. You can find us on Twitter at @Euractiv under this hashtag. You can find us on Blue Sky at @Euractiv as well. And I'm very grateful to you all for participating. Thank you for submitting your questions. Sadly, the questions that were submitted now are too late. I think we're done with this discussion. This has been this morning's debate, and I bid you all a great day. Goodbye.